we are good if you want to get us started.
All right, I'd like to call to order July 23rd, 2020 Planning Board meeting. Ms. Tanya, would you like for everybody to pronounce yourself so we can do a roll call?
Yes, if y'all could announce yourselves so we can do roll call, please.
Rake up.
Vaughn Willoughby.
Lee Osley.
Bill Poe.
Gene Brooks. Hey, David Spruill is using the chat box.
Okay.
Amy Gay.
We just had Deborah Hyder join as well. Hey, Deborah.
Hello.
Just doing roll call.
Okay. Did everybody get to announce? I think we've got everybody, right?
Okay, fair enough. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes from the last meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
So that
Second.
was Vaughn, for the record, that was
Yeah,
Vaughn,
yeah.
and who seconded?
Lee Osley seconded.
So just for our information, when we do these live meetings on YouTube, they can't see you. So if you, whatever you say, if you could put your name before or after whatever you say.
Yeah, I forgot. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Apparently not. Ms. Tanya, what do you have for public comments?
We have a couple public comments that are specific to some the items on the agenda. I can read them now for us, or I can wait and do it. They're both for the solar energy system ordinance. So I can do it now, or we can do it when we get to that item. It's up to you, Chair.
Let's do it when we get to that item.
All right, well, we'll do it then.
Awesome. All right. Ms. Tanya, do we have any board or commission responses?
No, that will just be in response to public comment, so we can wait to do that once we read the comments.
Awesome. Okay. So that brings us to new business, manufacturing home park review.
Yes, and there's some procedural guidelines that we typically read for these types of hearings. Give me just a minute. It's about a page worth, but I want to read these out loud to y'all just so you know what is expected of the board and how this should work.
Go right ahead, man.
Thank you. As Alamance County Planning Board Secretary, I would like to explain the procedures used for this hearing. All those wishing to speak are asked to sign the roster at the podium, which we actually took it by email. This hearing will be considered quasi-judicial. The process is similar to a court proceeding. First, a staff member of the planning department will present an overview of the case. Then the applicant will have an opportunity to speak on behalf of the application. Anyone else present to speak on behalf or against the proposed waiver will be allowed to speak. The applicant may then be given the opportunity to present any rebuttals. So we'll do the public comment as that. Board members are asked to refrain from questions until each speaker has completed his or her presentation. All testimony is given under oath. In a few minutes, the oaths can be given, but like I said, there's nobody present for us to do oaths for. We'll skip that part tonight. The proceedings of this board will be governed by the manufactured home park ordinance as recorded. All witnesses should come forward, and we would swear them in normally right now at the live meetings. Before each application, the chair will read the findings that must be made to approve an application, and any testimony should be relevant to the criteria that the board uses to determine whether they approve or an application. Testimony should consist of facts each witness knows, not hearsay. Any additional written evidence or exhibits must be presented to the chair, vice chair, and determination will be made whether it should be accepted. Written evidence or exhibits will be made available for inspection to those present and will be made part of a written record of the meeting. So our visual things are actually what we're zooming tonight, so that should be fine. If you wish to ask further questions, you may be recognized by the chair. We're not doing public in this, but if we had a live meeting, we would do that. I would like to note that the board members may have visited each site under consideration as part of their preparation for this meeting. The board will vote on each case after the presentation of all the evidence and discussion among themselves concerning the case. Motion should either recommend approval of the review request or denial of the review request. Conclusions must be made for both approvals and denials. All those wishing to speak as a witness in the case, please repeat, and that we would swear people in at this point. There's some language here that will provide availability for when a motion is ready for approval or denial. And we can pull that up on the screen when it's time to. But that is the basics of how we're handling the quasi judicial hearing. From that, y'all probably got a copy in your ordinance of the information memorandum for the mobile home park. Taylor, do we have that in the presentation?
We do. Let me scroll to that.
This is just a memorandum to show and give y'all the information straight out of the ordinance on what the board is to review and how this process works. The review is really a way of asking for some variation to the ordinance, developers needing some kind of different relief from the ordinance for different reasons. And from planning board, it goes to board of commissioners for the final decision for what is called a review in that mobile home ordinance. But it's handled through this quasi judicial hearing process simply because it's factual based and we don't allow for hearsay of I don't like, or this shouldn't be. It's really going to have to be something that people can back information up to give their opinion on. So that's what that memo is covering straight out of our ordinance and what we're allowed to hear and how this process works. The next page is the staff report. And so we've got the information about the mobile home park, of course, your PIN numbers and all that for tax purposes. Size of the track, there's 2 tracks involved here. They're being combined for purposes of this project, but you're looking at probably around 6 acres total for what the project will cover. And for tonight, you'll see that there's several lots on the front side of the property and several lots on the back side of the property. Considerations for tonight are for road frontage on several of the lots that were created, and then the actual setback for the lots are a concern. Those are the things that the applicants asked for pretty much forgiveness and a review on. I am letting into the meeting now the applicant's engineer. He can represent the project. Let's see, Bobby, can you hear us? Let me see if I can get his volume on here.
For the record, I wanted to let you know Eric McPherson joined the board while you were reading the memo.
Thank you. Bobby, can you hear us yet? I don't think the sound has
Sorry.
connected yet. Okay, here comes the applicant as well. Now, the board is welcome to ask me any questions right now before the applicants get in to just clarify any questions you have about the process before they get started.
Yep, and this is Ben Pierce. I'm here if y'all have any legal questions or anything about that as well.
Nathan, can you hear us?
Yeah, we're here.
Great, okay. Ray, if you're okay, we can let the applicants do their presentation for tonight.
That'd be awesome.
And Taylor, you've got their presentation?
I do. I have it on the screen now.
Okay, we can see that.
Great.
Are you ready to go, Nathan or Bobby? Who's doing the presentation tonight?
Sure thing. Great. Thanks. Is Bobby here as well?
Yes, he is. If y'all want to turn your cameras on, the board can actually
Sure.
kind of see you present. That'd be fine.
Yeah. Start video. Let's see. Is this working? Can you all see us?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for having us. So I can't see my own self, so I'll just assume that it looks great. But thanks again. Well, thanks to Tanya and to the board for having us tonight. My name's Nathan, and my wife Callie and I wanted to share a little bit about our development here. It's called Cranmore Meadows, and of course, Bobby is here with us as well, and we're hoping that our friends Rob and Marlo Countess can join us as well. We just sent them the Zoom link. Now, a little about us, just to provide some context. We live ourselves full time in one of these tiny houses on wheels, and our main goal is to make a neighborhood for more folks to park theirs. And we've really endeavored hard to try and meet all of the requirements of the manufactured home ordinance, but you'll see there are a few cases where we met more of the spirit of it than the letter, because the land features are really challenging, and so that's why we're here tonight. So next slide, please, Taylor.
Whoa.
Oh, let's see.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I don't have my mouse tonight, so hold on 1 second. There we go.
All right. Oh, let's see. There it goes. Okay, so yeah, we're new to Alamance County since October. We bought the land back in 2018, but we've been longtime Triangle residents, and we actually got married in Saxbaha in 2014, and then decided to move here permanently. I work at a tech startup in Durham. My wife works at UNC's Entrepreneurship Center, and she helps students start business at Keenan Flagler. And not long after we got married in Saxbaha, we thought we wanted to try and start to build our own tiny house on wheels to save money and live more simply. But that's us. And Bobby here from Bodie Land and Design, he has been a major partner and factor in making this dream come to life. And a little bit about him on the next slide.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, my turn. Yeah, I've been practicing engineer for about 12 years. My background is in sort of civil, environmental, and bio and ag. And during that whole time, I've sort of been actively farming here in Chatham County, moved more into kind of perennial agriculture and ranching the past 5-6 years, and sort of hybridized those two professions with the creation of Bodie Land and Design, which has kind of been supporting ag-based development, eco-design, and providing consultant and regenerative ag practices in general. Next slide.
So part of why Nathan and I want to build this community is because it's hard to find a place to park a tiny house legally. And we wanted to help solve this problem by making a neighborhood for other tiny house dwellers. Once we started building our tiny house, we kept meeting people who loved the idea of tiny houses and wanted to live in their own. So we know there's a lot of demand locally, and by all accounts, there's a lot of demand nationally as well. Just look at how many shows there are on TV. And we believe Alamance County is the perfect place to make this happen. Next slide. So the name of our development is called Cranmore Meadows, and we propose 13 full-time tiny house spots with a shared community building. We know of a successful 50-acre community in Asheville as a model, but this would be the first of its kind in the Piedmont. Next slide.
So the land itself that we purchased, we looked for a long time to find a place. We were living in Durham County at the time, and we were drawn to Alamance for a lot of reasons. And so we finally found this lovely 30-acre spot off of 54 and 119. And when our realtor Marlo showed it to us 2 years ago, we knew right away it was perfect. Part of the charm is the rolling hills and all the water features, but that also makes it really hard to develop. That's partly why it has remained sort of in its farm status all this time, is because I think some other people had tried to do development and realized there's no way this is going to happen with the floodplains and everything. But so our idea is, it's not a traditional subdivision, but we can have a low impact project that could have, you know, about a dozen homes, but still maintain the rural farmland character. And we've been working closely with Bobby to try and preserve the open meadows and wildlife habitat. So we also want to do a permaculture farm, and we've been in touch with the Wildlife Commission to learn how best to preserve the land. So it's this balancing act between affordable, attractive housing, but also maintaining the character of the land as well. Next slide, please. Bobby, you wanna take this one?
Yeah, so a lot of the natural features and existing site conditions that sort of lend to the uniqueness of this site and the attractiveness of it for what Nathan and Callie are trying to do are also at the same time pretty significant constraints for the development of this property. You know, one of the bigger components is the Haw Creek that borders about half the property. And this, you know, is a major perennial water body in the area. And with that, you know, there is jurisdictional FEMA floodplain, which basically encompasses a lot of their bottom open land. At the same time, that sort of flat floodplain area transitions into rather steep topography, somewhat eroded over the years. It's wooded now, but it is definitely steep. And in the plans that we've provided, it's sort of based on what you'd call like a LIDAR base. So it's 2-foot topo, and it doesn't really reflect. It does a pretty good job of showing you the overall topographic nature of a property, but it doesn't represent the true sort of micro topography that is indicative of certainly a property like this. So in addition to those two constraints, there is an existing pond. There's several major draws and ephemeral creeks that do sort of are scattered throughout the property that would limit jurisdiction. And they've invested quite a bit in soil and private soil consulting, and we've already had the county environmental health out there on multiple occasions. And we know the extent of what the suitable soil there is for septic systems, and so we've sort of maxed that out. And yeah, go ahead to the next one. And so, you know, kind of using their goals and their business model, we were able to kind of come to a maximum lot size of about 13 lots. We were able to meet the 8,000 square foot minimum that's required for the manufactured home ordinance for lots that are served by community water and sewer. We have designed in a road that meets the fire marshal minimum requirements and the 50-foot clearway requirement for the in the ordinance that'll serve the entire property. We've also planned in for each of those lots the required designated parking spaces, and we're able to meet the road frontage for some of the lots. However, you know, we are requesting, you know, some hardships that we've experienced that just aren't practical to implement, and that is the, you know, these two here is the 45-foot structure setback. Now we couldn't meet that on lot 1, so that's the first 7 lots on the sort of the northeast side of the property. We can't meet that just because of the septic area, not trying to encroach upon that. And that's, like I said, we've sort of maxed out those boundaries due to terrain and suitable soil. So we did meet that though. We got it to about 35 feet, and we did meet it for all the back lots. And then the road frontage, the constraint there is that, you know, there's some major sort of draws on this property, and, you know, also at the same time trying to keep this compact. I mean, the tiny home isn't exactly a mobile home, so it doesn't need the same kind of requirements. We felt good from a access and constructability aspect of sort of narrowing those road frontages down, using the parking as part of the joint access to site those vehicles. But we are having trouble getting in the full 100-foot for, I guess, most of the lots. We did meet it for 3, but to do that, to expand it out is really going to cause a lot of mass grading, much more land clearance, and it'll have a significant impact on the neighbors and certainly the environmental, the natural water resources on the property and downstream.
So we think that it's a good plan. There's a couple of aspects, as Bobby just identified, where we were not able to meet exactly the spirit of the ordinance, but overall, we think it's a good project for Alamance. And the main reasons, we think there are 4 good reasons. It introduces some attractive, desirable housing for folks in Alamance County. These tiny houses hold their value really well. They're easy to move in case this doesn't work out. So that's one idea. Tiny house RVs are popular with young professionals like us, who we hope will bring workforce skills and improve the tax base. Tiny house RVs are much smaller than traditional manufactured homes. They don't require as much space to preserve the same degree of public safety, and they require fewer resources to build and maintain. They lower the per capita load on local power and water utilities, and it minimizes environmental disturbance. Like Bobby said, they don't need quite as much space to accomplish the same purpose. And finally, we think it's good for Alamance because nobody's doing anything like this. There's no other tiny house RV communities in the Triangle or Triad that we know of. So it'll confer some prestige on the county to say, like, look, we're on the forefront of doing some interesting things here. And so that's the kind of thing that we think will be good for the county's image. And again, there's lots of folks moving into Alamance, so we think this will be helpful for that. And I think that's all. So you can see here, we were actually featured last month on Tiny House Magazine. That was the cover story. And so there's clearly lots of interest in here. You can read all about it if you'd like to learn more. But we really wanted to thank, first of all, Tanya and the whole planning department for working with us for so long on this and providing such great guidance and feedback, because we really didn't know what we were doing. And so it's very helpful to get that expert guidance. And of course, thanks to Bobby for his expertise and guidance. And thanks to each of you for having us. We hope that you like the idea as much as we do.
Taylor, if you could flip back to our packet and do the overall site plan so the board can see the big picture of the project.
Okay. Is this the best one for looking overall, or is there?
There's more, let's see, I think it's 2 or 3 pages back from there. At the end, yeah, you're probably 6 or 7 pages at the end of their submittal.
Okay.
There's a overall site plan, engineer plans, really. There you are.
Great.
There we go. So that is the overall picture of what's being proposed. You can see the 13 lots. You can see the roadway that's been cut in. That was shown based off interpretation from the fire marshal, and this has gotten his blessing from that. Well, let's see. You can also tell on where the septic sites are. They're kind of on the south side of the road. So that keeps lots from being able to be put on there. They're doing more of a community septic, community well thing. Each lot won't have their own septic site or own well. It's shared for the whole site. You'll see that there's a home in the very back of the property being proposed, and there's a structure in the front that will be likely used for some kind of commercial event space. Those aren't things that are spoken to about in the mobile home park ordinance. I just want to kind of let you all know what those things were. They don't have anything to do with the lots that are being proposed. At this point, any questions the board has for myself or for the applicants, the floor is definitely given back to you, Ray.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments? Questions?
Hey, this is Gene. I got a couple questions. What's an average mobile home size, length and width? Do y'all know?
16 wide, 76 long. That's the biggest ones.
That's single wides, right? Or is that double wide?
That's single wides.
Single wide.
Okay.
And that's mostly what you're going to see in a park. It's very rare that you're going to see a double wide mobile home in a park. I'm not saying you can't, but it's not often.
Now, what's the average size of a tiny house?
Ours is pretty typical, I think. It's 8.5 by 20, but you'll see 8.5 by 24, sometimes 8.5 by 30.
Okay. The people living there, are you looking for permanent residents or just going to be like an RV park where they can come and go as they please? Or what's your plans anyway?
Our plan would be a permanent residence, so multi-year, potentially multi-generation. There are RV parks already that exist in the county, and those serve the needs of more temporary. But for folks like us that have our tiny house, we've been living in it now for 4 years and expect to live in it still for more. And so folks that have houses like ours, there's not a lot of places to put them, but most of the people that live in them, they're not itinerant. They live in them permanently.
Okay. And I think a couple more. How much grading and clearing do y'all think y'all gonna have to do?
Grading and clearing. I'll let Bobby answer that. We've got our bids in, and they're not cheap. Bobby, would you like to address that?
Yeah, I mean, we do exceed the minimum acreage. I don't, I've got a second set of plans. We've already designed out the roadway for bidding. And it's basically what you're looking at now. It does not really exceed that right of way all that much. And then we would just be clearing for the road, parking, and the lot. So, I mean, the goal here is to try to absolutely minimize the amount of clearing and grading, preserve as much of the natural existing character as possible, limit the built upon area. So, you know, it's not, like I said, it's not going to be much beyond the proposed right of way, and then it'll sort of encroach into, you know, the parking and the home lots. But beyond that, no other clearing is proposed as far as I'm aware.
Okay, that's all I had.
Yeah.
Tara Cobb, we do have a representative for the applicants on now that has gotten in. Are y'all ready to hear him?
Sure.
Can you hear us? Rob?
Yes, yes.
Okay. The chair says that you have the floor, open to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Appreciate the board members' time this evening. Just wanted to share a little bit about the journey on this project with the applicants. Some of the board members may remember me from my service on the planning board a few years ago. I've also had the opportunity to work as a realtor along with my wife, guiding them in the purchase of this land, and have heard their developmental plans for this project along the way. What I'd like to share with the board is how attentive that they've been to being responsible landowners and developers of this property. Have been very inquisitive about what would be pleasing to the planning board and to the citizens of Alamance County in the presentation of a project. It would not only be something that the county could be proud of, but would also be an aesthetic that would be something that would be a trendsetter in this space, as well as a responsibly maintained project. So from my perspective, as a previous member of the board, someone working with responsible buyers, I just would have to compliment them for the time and attention that they've taken to develop a great plan. They've been consulting us along the way, seeking good advice, and would just like to put my endorsement on this project in the most positive way that I can.
Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome.
I was, just to answer that last question, I looked, it is 3 acres is the current disturbed area out of 30, which would, that excludes the 2 house sites though. They're not included there.
Hey, Ray, this is Bill Pope. May I make
Hey,
a comment?
Bill, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you. A couple questions here, I guess, I got is the septic areas, the 2 proposed septic sites. There's looks like a discrepancy of the 100-year floodplain from the GIS and then from a survey. I guess this has gone through the health department. How does that work with the septic area being within a 100-year floodplain, one? And then my comment would be that this looks very similar to something that is coming through land development of cluster buildings. So that's more appealing than a straight mobile home park or anything like that. And these homes are kind of cute. I've seen, a lot of magazines and shows on this type of construction. So.
Bill, do you mind if I jump in and answer that part of that question for you?
Yes, sir.
All right, this is what I do know. As far as that 100-year floodplain, you cannot build or park an inhabitable structure within that floodplain, okay? But you can install a septic field in that floodplain. And looking at the plan that I've got here, proposed septic field at the end over near the emergency turnaround.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the just a little bit of that corner within that floodplain. That I do know. You can install septic lines in the floodplain. You cannot set a tank in the floodplain, but you can put the lines in the floodplain because it's going to be subsurface. It's not as if it's going to, wash away and be 5 miles down the creek or something. That I do know, but I guess the only thing that's kind of sort of got me concerned, best I can tell, it looks like on lots 2, 3, and 4, behind the structures appears to be a soil area. Okay. Lot 1 appears to be pumped over to the backside of lot 5. And it looks like, well, let me see, lot 6 and 7 also has what appears to be a soil area there as well. But now when you get down to lot 6 through 13, I'm not seeing a soil area on that side. I'm seeing it on the other side of the road. So
That's correct.
my question there is, this road going to be built remotely to DOT standards, remotely?
This is Bobby. I can answer those questions too. I can add to the floodplain one as well. So I guess it's not a hard and fast rule at the moment, but I guess the local health departments are getting a lot of pressure from the state to not permit any more septic systems in the floodplain. So when we were out doing topographic surveying for this property, we wanted to go ahead and capture, okay, what's the actual floodplain extents, knowing that the GIS-based floodplain boundaries are not 100% accurate. So we pulled those elevations off the FEMA flood maps, surveyed that out, which actually gave them more room than from the GIS line. And so we're kind of estimating that the proposed, so the zones that say approved septic area have already been vetted by the county. Now, this was done, there's been several iterations. At one point, we were going to have separate systems. We've gone back and applied for another IP. We're going to combine the systems for say the north part of the lot, which would be the guest facility, and lots 1 through 7 will all be part of the same wastewater system. And that full active drain field area is going to be in that area 2. So the areas that are shown up near the lots 1 through 7 will be repair areas, and the building will meet the minimum setbacks from those areas, and we will absolutely not disturb those zones when we're doing we're doing clearing, and those repair areas will be protected. In terms of the road design, yes, it will meet DOT standards, except it'll be gravel instead of asphalt. And we've designed all the culverts and drainage and max slopes and all that. We will be submitting a detailed set of road plans whenever you all are ready to see that. It's more or less done, and we've gotten bids from several contractors.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, Bill?
Yeah, that answers my question there on the difference of the floodplain. So there was a survey versus the GIS. And
I
then
got
I guess the next question I would have also would be the surrounding. I mean, this hasn't gone to a public hearing, or is it subject to a public hearing? And
There
how's the
will be a
neighbors all
public
feel?
hearing at the commissioners meeting is where we'll hold the public hearing.
Okay, all right, very good.
Well, but this has been, that hearing will be similar to this one in that the hearing is a quasi judicial hearing. It is not a public opinion hearing. It will define the same facts that y'all are looking at finding. And that's the law that we have in place right now.
Ms. Tanya,
Yes, sir.
am I allowed to ask Mr. Tucker a question?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Mr. Tucker,
Yes, sir.
you just said a second ago that you guys were applying for an IP with the county. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we are, what is the term they're using? We are redoing, I guess, there was already 2 separately approved IPs, and we're going back and combining those 2 into one system. So it's a new IP that will
I got you.
solve the first 2.
Okay. Well, what I do know is when they do the IP, when a representative from the health department goes out, lays the system out, and obviously a fee's paid, then they'll issue a construction authorization. At that time is when you're going to get some nuts and bolts of those septic systems, okay? What I do know to tell you is if lots 1, I'm going to say lots 1 through 7. Of course, I know lot 1 is pumped over to the backside of lot 5. I understand that. But if any of those lots, we're going to say 1 through 7, are going to approve septic area number 2, what I do know is when you go under that roadway, you're going to have to be a minimum, I want to say 36 inches deep going under that road. I'm going to call it a supply line going from the septic tank and or tanks that's on lot 1 through 7 to get to that septic field over on area 2. I do know that. And it says right there, pump to 25% reduction.
Oh, okay. So that might be confusing. That's for the repair. If Taylor or Tanya can pull up one of the other sheets, I guess it maybe C2 will show the sort of proposed layout. So all lots 1 through 7 will drain to their own septic tank. There'll be a separate tank and a flow equalization tank over serving the guest house.
All right.
And
So
then, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So lots 1 through 7 will drain to its own septic tank, which then will drain down to a secondary pump tank, which will dose that lower area 2. And we've got plenty of fall coming down that hill to meet, to stay under that roadway for the minimum requirements.
Well, I guess, okay, this is what I do know. Looking at this plan, you've got a 1,500 gallon septic tank right beside lot 7. And then it's going to go gravity from there down to a 1,000 gallon dosing tank on the other side of the road. And under North Carolina state wastewater rules, it would have to be a minimum of a 3-inch pipe from that 1,500 gallon tank to that 1,000 gallon tank, and you still have to maintain that 36 inches under the road. On the flip side, and I understand with an IP, you're still in the planning stages, and I understand what you're talking about as far as fall. I deal with that stuff. But why that dosing tank is not up there within 3 feet at 1,500 gallon tank, you can literally bore up under that road. I did that over on Crawford Road, but you can bore up under that road in case sleeve it, if you will. Come out right there at the top of approved septic area number 2, right up there, directly below number 5. You set your pressure manifold right there, install your 25% reduction material, and you off to the races. But having a septic tank and a dosing tank in 2 completely, we're going to say, I'm just guessing, I'm not scaled it or nothing, but we're going to say 40 to 50 foot apart, maybe more than that. I've never seen it. That's why I've never seen that. I've never seen it.
Well, I guess that dosing tank is also receiving a force main from the event area. So it's closer to that. It's kind of splitting the difference. Although you do raise a point. I mean, 3-inch gravity PVC is going to be more money than, you know, what we end up using 1.5 inches, 2 inches force main. So that's something we'll definitely, I'll look into. I think the environmental health is going to look to us to put together some of the plans for the flow equalization and the pump tanks. So we'll have control over addressing that then. But that's a good point. Thank you for raising that.
Well, typically, and I'm saying this, I know this to be an actual fact. Bill, if you don't mind, jump in anytime you want. But typically, a construction authorization, especially when you're talking about a pump system, which is a dosing tank, okay? Generally, that's just for illustration purposes. As long as, let's say in Alamance County, you can be 5 foot away from the house and or structure with any part of the septic system, meaning tanks, force main, manifold, septic field, any of the above. So being practical about the whole thing, that dosing tank would be much better served for everybody involved right off that 1,500 gallon septic tank. And the biggest reason I'm even chiming in on that, I do have I know a lot about septic systems, let's put it that way. But I do know you have to be 36 inches under that roadway, regardless. If it is a roadway that is traveled with vehicular traffic, it has to be 36 inches under the surface of the ground when it goes under that roadway. Outside that, when you come out of that dosing tank, there is no requirements that says that force main from that dosing tank to that manifold, there is nothing in the rules that say it has to be a particular depth as long as it is covered. So in North Carolina, in Alamance County, that force main would be of 2 inch in size, 2 inch pressure rated schedule 40. And what I'm saying is septic water does not freeze. It will not freeze. So that's why there's no requirements by the state of North Carolina or the county for that force main to have a particular depth. But when you go under that roadway, there is a requirement.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, you're right away here, right where that little cursor hand marker's at, to the exact other side where the right-of-way is at. In that right-of-way, that pipe has to be 36 inches deep, and it has to be sleeved. I do know that.
For the gravity, is what you're saying.
Gravity or force main, either one. That septic pipe, when it goes under that road, has to be 36 inches deep.
Oh, I thought you were saying that just the gravity pipe, that once it leaves the force, the pump, the dosing tank, there wasn't the minimum requirement, but
any part of it, the way the state looks at it, the way the state looks at it with Schedule 40 pipe, and that's what is required. If you bury Schedule 40 pipe at 36 inches deep, by the time that ditch is backfilled properly, there will be no compaction, no chances of egg shaping that pipe or compromising its integrity. That's why they have that 36 inch requirement. So even if you've got fall and you put that septic tank beside a lot 7 and you put that dosing tank on the other side of the right of way, that septic tank would have to be traffic rated because it'd have to be 3 foot in the ground to maintain fall at 36 inches deep under that roadway.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the health department's got the final say in that, but I know those rules very well.
We might be building, might be wrong. I have to look at the road profile. We are going to add some fill on that bend, but you know what you're saying. I mean, we'd have to pump uphill and add more length to our force main, but you know, moving the tank up there would also put us closer to where their current transformer and power supply would be as well. And you'd have two tanks closer together from a maintenance. So, I mean, what you're saying is totally logical. I don't see a problem doing that at all. I mean, I think we got plenty of room to work with.
Obviously, that would be an environmental health issue. But I just wanted to, you know, Mr. Poe asked that question, and he was right in doing so. And the information that I did provide just now is, I mean, it's there. So, I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. To be honest with you, the tiny house concept, I kind of like, okay? I feel like if these setback requirements can be met within reason, me personally, and it's just my personal opinion, I don't see no harm in a tiny house development. I don't. So with that being said, I'm going to excuse myself. Anybody else need to jump in, questions or any kind of concerns?
Thank you for that.
You're very welcome, sir. Thank you.
That was really helpful. Thank you.
Hey, this is Gene. If nobody has any questions, I would like to make a motion for the approval of the request.
This is Vaughn. I'll second that motion.
Okay. Ms. Tanya, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We need to do a roll call for that so we know who's speaking.
Okay, Ms. Tanya, this is Ray. Motion from Mr. Brooks and a second from Mr. Willoughby. All those in favor signify with your name.
Bill Pope.
Vaughn Willoughby.
Lee Isley.
Gene Brooks.
Gail Walker.
Eric McCarthy.
Dave Spruill has voted by chat as well.
Okay. Miss Tanya, is that everyone in our roll call or are we missing anybody?
I'm missing Deborah, I believe. Deborah, can you hear us?
She is on mute, so
Uh-oh.
we've got her.
Okay.
I'm here. I agree with,
Okay, Ray, that is everybody.
All right. And I'm assuming just for clarification, any of those opposed? Well, the motion carries.
Okay, Nathan, I'm going to put all y'all back out in the waiting room for them to take on their next item of business. Was there anything else you needed from our board?
Just wish we could be there to shake your hands and celebrate. But apart from that, thanks so much for having us, and we appreciate your time and thoughtful consideration.
We'd love any of you to come out and visit. Thank you.
You're very welcome, folks. Have a good evening.
Thank you too.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Ms. Tanya, I'm assuming that brings us to the solar energy system ordinance.
Yes, sir, it does. This is the final draft from the subcommittee. And Jean, I don't know if there's more you want to give to them to represent I know mainly the response was from comments at the planning board last time, and Mr. Willoughby joined the subcommittee for conversation about the landscaping. So I don't know if Mr. Willoughby has any additional comments as well.
Well, I want to, if I could, just first off, I want to thank Ashley Harris, Eric McPherson, and Vaughn Willoughby for their help, along with Tanya Taylor and Ben for helping us with this. When I presented it at the last planning board meeting we had, Mr. Willoughby joined and we made a few changes. And I'll go over the changes that we made. The first one is on page 4. Section 3, the operation setbacks. We had some questions about, is the 75 foot, is that were we going to have the roads in that setback, out of that setback? We left it like it was. It's 75 feet from the property line to the solar equipment. That's what we came up with. So that's one thing that we left alone. Then on page 6, the landscaping and screening. With the advice of Mr. Willoughby, we had it in here that screening shall be a minimum of 50 feet, and we changed it to 30 feet on the advice of Mr. Willoughby, who said if you take the plants that we had in there and spread them out over 50 feet, we're more or less defeating the purpose of screening. So we made the screening area smaller so there would be more compact. We also put a size requirement of the plant, which was not in the previous one. Mr. Willoughby can correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that about, didn't you say about 3 to 4 feet high, is 7 gallon?
Yeah, are you there? Can you hear
Yes.
me, Vaughn? The general, here's my thought process on that. You can buy a 36-inch tall plant in a 1 gallon container, and it's going to be 3 feet tall, but it's going to be, 4 inches wide. In other words, it's going to be a seedling or a stem. It's not going to have any branching or any kind of structure to it. So the general idea is if you require that minimum size or, that range 36 to 48, but you also say it has to be in a 7 gallon container, then you're guaranteeing to get a more quality looking plant at the time of installation rather than some skimpy, small, inadequate looking material. So that was the thought process of requiring at least a 7 gallon container.
And then, let's see. I think the only other thing that we changed from our previous is Appendix A. We carried over where it said that it should be a minimum of 30 feet, at least 36 to 48 inches or 7 gallon containers right there. The suggested vegetation, again, with the advice of Mr. Willoughby, we took out some things and added some things based on what should grow here, what's available, and everything else. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that is everything that we changed or took in advice from the last time we had a meeting.
Mr. Brooks, is that what you have for now?
Yes, that's what I have for now.
Okay. Mr. Poe, you still there?
I am, sir.
Okay, awesome. Do you still work that job you had last year down in Durham?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, Corning Life Sciences, yes.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because I know good and well that if you work down that way, you pass at least one, if not two solar farms to get there.
That's correct.
Okay. It's like I do believe I commented the last meeting we had. I personally myself have had a few jobs, one over in Guilford and one up in Rockingham, and I paid farms to get to those jobs. And this is just my opinion, and I brought you in this for, because I want you to be a part of it. But with what the subcommittee has put together here, I'm not saying is more coarse or more rigid, but it's kind of falling in line with what I've seen in Rockingham County as well as in Guilford. And Mr. Willoughby's help and contribution concerning the vegetation is, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I feel like it's great. Awesome. I think he did an awesome job. I think he was the right man for the job. And me personally, I'm good with the ordinance as it's written.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the one that comes to mind to me more directly of what would be the one on Red Mill Road, north of Durham, up there in the Trayburn area.
Yes, sir.
Yes, and this would be in compliance with that and along those lines. Probably the only two things I have is when on Appendix A, to be consistent with F, is Appendix A says the 36 to 48 or 7 gallons, and F it says 36 to, or the at least a 7 gallons. So I would like to see that 36 to 48 and 7 gallon. Is that something that might be a nitpicky thing there, but I can see where that could be construed?
No.
I agree 100%. I noticed that when I read it.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is wrong. I think it was intended to be in a 7-gallon container, not or 7-gallon container.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Poe, I think that was very well put.
The other thing that I have, I think we've talked about it several times, is I do still have heartburn with the access roads. I know Vaughn had brought it up a couple meetings ago about, and there are going to be extenuating circumstances for sure, and we don't want to be as rigid to where we say no. But I'd rather, if an access road is needed within that 75 feet with extenuating circumstances, I'd rather approve that than have to defend against that. Does that make sense?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes, it makes sense, but every solar farm I've seen and been by, I've never seen anybody there. So to me, an access road would be used when it was put in and for maintenance. Heavy traffic every day. So that's why I was good with either they could put it in there or they couldn't put it in there. Because most of the ones I've seen, and y'all can correct me because y'all seen more than I have. The ones I've seen, the access road pretty much goes down the middle.
That's right.
It's not on the outsides. So if we're 75 foot, that's just area they're going to mow anyway. But yes, it could be used to ride around with. But most of the roads I've seen, like I said, were down the middle. So that's why it was not a big deal to me anyway.
Mr. Brooks? Mr. Brooks,
Yes,
can I jump in for just a second?
sure you can.
All right, awesome. And I don't see it right here in front of me, but that we're gonna say buffer. Now I ain't talking about the vegetative buffer, but we're gonna say the setbacks. You said they were at how many feet?
75.
Okay, and you got within that 75 feet, you've got a 30-foot wide buffer.
Correct.
Okay, of planted vegetation.
Correct.
All right, the ones that I've looked at and witnessed and seen with my own 2 eyes, you have a vegetative buffer and then a chain link fence, correct?
We've got a chain link fence, but I don't remember if it says inside the buffer, outside. Do you know, Tanya?
Let me pull that real quick. Let's see here. A minimum, At a minimum, the area of operations of the solar energy system shall be completely enclosed by a minimum 6-foot high fence with a self-locking gate. So it doesn't tell you which side to put it on.
Right.
So that 6-foot chain link fence could be within that, would you say 75-foot buffer requirement?
Yes.
All right, so in all theory, you could have a 30-foot wide vegetative buffer, then a chain link fence, but those solar panels themselves and working equipment still have to be 75 feet off that property line. Is that correct?
Correct.
Then there should be room for an access road up against that chain link fence to go all the way around if that's what they're.
Correct.
So I'm with Mr. Poe on that definition right here, where he said 36 to 48 7-gallon container. I would say in a 7-gallon container, I'd be good with that. As far as that access road, I mean, you got to be able to access the project. So if that vegetative buffer is put in with the suggestions Mr. Willoughby has made, chain link fence, you're not going to see that gator path around that chain link fence on the inside. You're not going to see it. Is that a fair statement?
Can I jump in for a second? This is Vaughn.
Please do, sir.
The idea that I think we sort of had was the 75 feet and the access road. Basically, that language gave them flexibility. It doesn't mean they have to put it there. It doesn't mean they don't have to. It doesn't mean, it means what I think we were trying to give them was some flexibility, because these sites are going to be specific to themselves. And so in some cases, they may need that space to get around. In other places, they may not need it at all. It'll just be vegetation. It'll just be grass, and they'll mow it or bush hog it or whatever they do.
Right.
But I think the general idea was to allow the flexibility. And what I think that we're going to do, I mean, I'm assuming this is what would happen. Maybe this is the wrong thing to assume. Each one of these farms is going to have a set of plans that we have to approve that show where those roads are going to go, and that will become specific to that project at the time of approval. So we'll still have control over whether or not that happens. Am I correct on that?
Well, for the most part, I would agree. Yes. And this is again my idea is to give the solar industry an ordinance to follow and to go by, so we do not have any more Wild West show solar farms. Okay, but at the same time, give them something that they can work with to have a nice facility that's not going to be aggravative to the community. And with what I've read in this ordinance that you guys have put together, me personally, I think it looks great. I think you guys did an awesome job. That's what I think. Ms. Harris, all you folks, you did an awesome job.
Hey, Ray, it's
Ray.
Bill Poe again.
Yes, sir.
I got one more comment then on that. If we allow the access roads, because really the language doesn't really describe out. We think we know common sense approach would be either landscape screening, fencing, and then a road. But that really doesn't say that. You could potentially go road, fence, and landscaping. Really, I mean, it really doesn't describe that out, does it? So I was thinking, what about no road, no access road within the first 50 feet? And at least that would kind of prioritize where the road would be. Any thoughts on that?
Well, what's going to happen, and this can happen, and it comes right back down to in the construction business. You, sir, yourself are very well aware of this. An engineer can draw some plans at his desk, and it look nice on paper, but it might not work on the ground. So what we're going to have when we get in a situation where you have topo or elevations that do not allow that road within 50 feet or at 50 feet. You know, that's why, you know, what I'm seeing is an ordinance that has its requirements, but at the same time is allowing enough flexibility that these projects can go forward, because let's do keep in mind, a solar farm is not going to generate any dust. It's not going to be any noise like a manufacturing facility. And you don't have to worry about 1 o'clock in Sunday morning, somebody having a pig picking down there. It's not going to happen. It's going to be a quiet neighbor that is not really going to do anything other than make sure when you flip your light switch on, that you can still get a drink of Pepsi out of the refrigerator. So I understand, wanting to hold the line, but at the same time, this is a good industry. It is renewable energy. No trees are being lost, no oil spills are happening, nothing like that. I mean, that's the only way I know to answer that.
Right. Yeah, I understand. And, we talked about the two solar farms that I passed on the way to Durham, one on 85 and up there in Red Mill Road. But I come back to what kind of started some of the complaints on the solar farm down here in Snow Camp was on Stephanie Thurman's property down here off of Clark Road. They put an access road really close to the fence. There was no accountability for drainage, and the drainage comes across into her property. And everybody knows this because she spoke several times at our planning board meetings and the county commissioners meetings about the concerns. And Tanya has been out, and Teresa had been out on landscape issues that had died and all that. And that's one thing. And not going to say that all solar farms may not be a good neighbor, but I can, from the experience of this one, that's why I just have this little heartburn of the access road, because I've seen it in action. Now, I would hope, like Mr. Willoughby said, that, yeah, we would have opportunity to talk about it and maybe say, hey, that's not a good idea. But like all the ordinances in Alamance County, isn't this more of a checklist affair that if they do the checklist, Miss Tanya's got to approve it? Isn't that right?
That is what we have set up. Because we don't have zoning authority, those kind of discriminatory or discretionary decisions can't be made. Our ordinances are very technical, and that's the approval we have to give. Ben, is there anything different you would add?
No, I think that's a pretty fair statement.
But on that
Right.
excuse me, Mr. Poe, this is Gene Brooks.
Yes, sir.
But on that one solar farm that she kept coming, didn't they come back and say that there was some question about whether the runoff was on her property or if her dog was going on the solar farm property?
No, negative.
Okay.
Negative on that. But
But if that's
Yeah.
one, how many solar farms are in Alamance County? Does anybody know?
6 or 8, 10 of them, I don't know. Quite a
Okay.
bit.
Yeah, I
So-
believe there's been about a dozen or so approved over the years, but active is probably half of that. Just approved plans out there we can see pretty rarely. Or David Sproul is saying 30.
Okay, so we're trying to make an ordinance the way I approach this, we were trying to make an ordinance to make it fair to everybody. So if we go back in and start adding restrictions for one farm that had problems out of 30, I mean, it looks like, I don't want to get to where it's so restricted that nobody wants to do it. You see what I'm saying? You're trying to be fair to everybody. You're bringing up one case where there could be 29 other people saying the exact opposite. So that's why, we're trying to juggle this here.
This is Val. Can I jump in for a second?
Yes, sir.
I just have a question about the site plan for these farms. Is there someone that's looking at this plan and approving it before it gets built? Is that what Tanya does? Is that what happens?
That's what I do. When they submit it, I compare what the ordinance says compared to what they've drawn. And once they meet the requirements of the ordinance, then we move forward for you all to look at pretty much the same list and then the commissioners to look at it to give final approval.
Well, my question would be somewhere in there. And what I'm getting to is this: you can't overcome bad design. If this thing is not designed very well, if it's poorly designed, and my thinking is, and I don't know, I haven't seen Ms. Thurman's property and the solar property down there, but my mind tells me there's some poor plan going on there with the way that was located on the site and et cetera, et cetera. So that's my question about these roads, about the placement of them, about the placement of this fence, the placement of the landscape and the placement of the road, the placement of everything needs to be on a set of site plans that somebody can see that and say, you know, I've seen this site and that's not a good idea the way they've got it. We need to put the fence differently. We need to put the road somewhere else. We need to make some kind of accommodation for each site if it has a question. So that's why I keep coming back to this. We should be able to have some control over the final say-so about the site plan.
I do want to make one correction. As we've written the ordinance right now, planning board gives that approval only if someone needs to appeal that approval. Does it go to the Board of Commissioners?
Hey, Ray, Bill Poe again.
Hey, sir.
Hey, just for the record, I have no qualms about solar farms whatsoever. I really don't. They have potential to, you know, still be a farm with they put the sheep out there to cut the grass, you know, and that's cool. I really have no heartburn with the solar farms. I just from this one experience, and yeah, I get what Gene's saying. You don't want to throw out the whole bushel of apples because of one bad one, but that's kind of what ordinances are for, is to protect against that one bad guy, you know, because there's always going to be one guy that's going to circumvent everything. But I mean, you know, I'm fine with the rest of the ordinance. I know we went too far in our original HIDO when we lumped them into a 2, and then we came off that to a 1 and all that sort of stuff. And I'm fine with the majority of this. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, no, you're fine, sir. You're fine. Throw your opinion in. That's what it's all about. In all honesty, the biggest reason we're here now is because of that one down on Snow Camp Road. That's the biggest reason we're here. And that's very well understandable. And I do thank you for your opinion, sir.
Mr. Cobb, I do want to remind, when the board is ready, I do have 2 submitted public comments for this part of our agenda for tonight.
Mr. Brooks,
Yes, sir.
what do you think about, let's let Ms. Tanya go ahead and do those public comments so we can find out what the community's got to say.
Okay. Works for me.
Go ahead, Ms. Tanya.
Okay, the first one I have is from Carson Hawkrader. She is the CEO of Carolina Solar Energy. Y'all have seen her at the meetings before. Her email says that she wants to confirm that she shares Strata Solar's 2 comments. Our other prior comments have been addressed. Depending on how the meeting goes tonight and whether there's a chance for public comment, they may send someone else to the final decision at the Board of Commissioners, but wanted to make sure that she confirmed that Strata's comments she approves. And the Strata comments are from Total Duggan's attorney at law. This is Michael Fox is the attorney there that submitted this. This is about a 1.5 page writing, so I'm going to read. Y'all stop me if you can't hear me or if you need clarification. We'll get started here. He says this letter is sent on behalf of our client, Strata Solar Development, LLC in North Carolina, hereinafter referred to as Strata, to provide comments on the proposed Alamance County Solar Energy System Ordinance, hereinafter referred to as solar ordinance. We appreciate all of the planning department's help and effort during the process of the drafting the solar ordinance. Further, we believe that the proposed solar ordinance represents a significant improvement from the existing regulation of solar energy systems pursuant to the heavy industrial development ordinance. However, we would like to offer the following comments to address potential negative unintended consequences of the solar ordinance as currently drafted. Now, this was sent to us on July 8th, by the way, so this should be the updated ordinance. Number one, operations permit automatic expiration and required renewal under Section 6 of the solar ordinance. As currently drafted, Section 6 of the solar ordinance mandates that solar energy system permits issued under this ordinance are valid for a period of 3 years and shall automatically expire unless renewed. Such a requirement is very unusual and is unique among how other North Carolina municipalities and counties handle permitting expiration. In the majority of municipalities and counties, once a solar project is initiated under the operations permit, the project continues indefinitely until either operations cease or the operator violates some provision of the permit or applicable regulations. We feel that this method is time tested and gives local counties sufficient control to ensure that the permit and other regulations are being complied with fully. In addition to being unique as compared to other North Carolina jurisdictions, the current expiration and renewal requirement under the solar ordinance poses a significant hurdle for project developers in trying to secure financing for solar energy projects because leaders view SES projects as 40 to 50-year investments. Accordingly, any short period of time causes lenders to be reluctant to offer financing for SES investments. Let's see here. For SES projects due to perceived risk and insecurity associated with the shorter timeline and possible renewal hurdles. The proposed 3-year limit of permits is a vast discrepancy from industry standards related to SES projects. Solar ordinance shall be revised to reflect a more customary approach to permit expiration as set forth above, whereby the permit shall continue indefinitely until either one of the events mentioned in 1 or 2 above occurs. Adopting this majority view will better serve the intent of the solar ordinance to allow the placement and growth of solar energy systems in Alamance County by removing unintended obstacles to the financing of solar projects, which still provides the county with sufficient control over each such projects by allowing the revocation of a permit in the event of non-compliance by the operator and/or developer. So the second part of his concern is bond requirement under Section 3F of the solar ordinance. Section 3F of the proposed solar ordinance provides that the applicant must plant the required screening and/or landscaping at the time of permit issuance, or else the applicant is required to post a bond or certified check in the amount of 1.5 times the landscape architect's estimate for the proposed plan. Furthermore, the section provides that should the applicant fail to install the necessary landscaping screening within 8 months, the county will be entitled to complete the landscaping plan using the proceeds of the bond or certified check. While we do not object to the option of a bond if a developer feels that it cannot install the landscaping buffer within a reasonable time frame, we will suggest some changes to the way bond works and the timing. First, we feel it is critical that the triggering event be changed to issuance of the building permit instead of operations permit, and that the timeline be extended from 8 months to 12 months, such that if applicant fails to complete the required screening or landscaping within 12 months of the issuance of the building permit, then the county will be entitled to complete the landscaping plan using the proceeds of the bond or certified check. This change is important because due to other regulatory issues, many projects do not even begin within the first 8 months of approval of the operations permit. Additionally, it is in best interest for both developers and the county to provide such increased flexibility in the timing of compliance with the landscaping and screening requirements because most vegetation has a specific season during the year in which it should be planted for optimal growth and adaptation. Even with this slightly increased timeline, the different triggering events, the county would still maintain adequate control over the implementation of the landscaping screening requirements and could even require regular site visits and inspections to satisfy any potential concerns. In conclusion, the solar ordinance represents a significant improvement in the regulation of solar energy systems in Alamance County. We believe that the aforementioned comments should be considered in order to avoid the potential negative unintended consequences resulting from the current drafting of the solar ordinance. Please do not hesitate and call with questions or concerns. Sincerely, Michael Fox. That is all the input I have.
Okay, you want to start on this one since we're on F right here?
Are you talking
Hello?
to Tanya or Ray?
Either one. I guess
Go
Ray.
ahead, go right ahead, Mr. Brooks.
Well, first off, did anybody see Commissioner Gailey's comment about the YouTube couldn't see the screen?
I did, and I'm watching the YouTube, so I'm not sure what's up with that. I'm looking at it now.
Okay, so it is showing.
I'm seeing it, yes.
Okay. So they want to change from the time that the permit was issued until the time they want to change the word permit to issuance to another issuance. What was that, Tanya? I'm sorry, I missed my notes.
Okay, so the permitting thing was, you're talking about the 3 years of automatic expiration, is that where we're at? Or are you talking about landscaping? You're talking about landscaping.
No, landscaping, since we're on that
Okay.
screen right here right now.
It says they want to change it to within 12 months of issuance of the building permit instead of
Yes.
the 8 months.
8 months of the permit issuance.
That'd be 8 months of the SCS permit. So they have 8 months. As it's written now, they have 8 months from the day that we tell them they can build their solar farm to get the plantings installed. This is Ben, by the way. They would like to have 12 months from the day they get the building permit in order, which means I guess they're actually starting construction, not necessarily us giving them permission to start construction.
May I jump in for just a second, please?
Sure, you're in charge.
Oh, okay. Mr. Poe,
Yes.
okay. Now, I understand what they're talking about as far as this permit, buying a permit and getting started with your construction. You're in this every day. What is the state's requirements? And it may be a different animal, but we're gonna say it's on the same farm anyway. What's the requirements if you buy a building permit to start a project? What's the requirements you have to be started by a certain time?
As long as you have an inspection within, well, some municipalities or 6 months, but a year generally.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I just wanted some clarification on that. Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sir.
I mean, from my standpoint, I don't have a problem with that. To change it from the permit issuance to the building permit issuance and going from 8 months to 12 months.
And this is Vaughn. I don't either. I mean, actually, when I read that, it kind of says like, as soon as they get a permit, they got to go out there and start planting a screen. And then I don't think that's reasonable.
Correct. I agree with that.
I think that's kind of unreasonable, actually. At any point, you're just a few months away from any good growing season, 6 months at the most, spring or fall. So, it's reasonable to say, they don't want to plant them in June, July, and August. That would be ridiculous to ask them to do that. But, between the other 9 months of the year, there's going to be a day they can plant something that would fall within that time. But I'm like Gene, I agree with that, changing that to a different word.
I mean, anybody know how long it takes from an average solar farm from the time you start putting it in till you get done? Because I would assume you'd want to be done with it before you start putting in your fence. I assume your fence and your landscaping. So the last two things you do is you go out the door.
That's
Am I
correct.
correct in that?
Yes, that would be correct.
Okay. Anybody know how long it takes to put a solar farm up?
Well, I know it's a significant financial input. I do know that. But those guys, the ones that I've seen, now I remember when they put one in down near exit 150 in Hall River. It went in pretty quick. And I mean quick. Once they got started, they didn't set up under the shade tree eating a sandwich. They went to work.
David Sproul has just commented that he believes it's 6 months.
Okay.
I'm sure it depends on the size. That has a lot to do with it.
And I believe
Yeah.
that's a correct statement. I really do. And you're right. It does depend on the size.
This is Taylor, and I would say for the more frequently, like the smaller sized farms, that typically we're seeing like 3 to 6 months on applications that I've seen in other municipalities. But of course, it is very, very size dependent and could take upwards of a year even.
So giving them a little bit of extra room wouldn't be a bad idea.
Right.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. If we want to change that.
I think that's a good idea. Mr. Brooks, how much more you got on this?
Nothing on this, the landscaping part, where we hadn't addressed the renewal. The other part that they had the question about, the first part.
They're wanting to do away with the 3-year renewal, though, correct?
That sounds right.
Yes.
All right, well, this is what I know. I've had some dealings in this. I'm assuming when they're issued their approval to operate or whatever. And the reason I'm saying this, understand, I'm not trying to get off topic. I'm just giving an example. Orange County, if you're living in a house in Orange County, that wastewater system goes 6 months without being used, then you have to go back through with a renewal process. But as long as it's being used and in service, I think they've got, like, depending on the type of wastewater system it is, it's a 5-year inspection deal or something. So, Gene, give me some input on that.
The reason it was put in, by my recollection, was because of number 2, the site visit required. We
Okay.
were trying to address Mr. Poe's concerns earlier about runoff and everything.
Uh-huh.
That we would get somebody out there at least every 3 years it would bring it to somebody's attention every 3 years that somebody from the planning board would go out there and make sure that the vegetation was good, that everything was operating functional. If I'm not mistaken, that's why we came up with this renewal required. But if that's the only reason, we could go. And how often do y'all normally check solar farms periodically, Tanya? Or is it
We're
kinda-
very complaint driven. If somebody has a complaint and lets us know something's going on, we go out. Otherwise, pretty much we look at it when we give that final approval to activate, and we rely pretty much on complaints, because you can't just drive by and see a lot of this. And for the acres and acres it is, we wouldn't have time to go walk the acreage of all of them, any real schedule, I guess.
Okay, because wasn't that the reason we put this in?
Yes,
This
you're
is
right.
very similar to the Hydo. This part was pulled a lot from the Hydo.
Okay, because
And this,
I'm sorry, Ben, go
I
ahead.
would say this is Ben, and Tanya's correct. That is from the HIDO, and every solar farm that has been permitted under that HIDO has that same renewal period on it. So if it's been developed in this county since 2011, it has that same renewal requirement.
Okay, this is Gene. So the people okay. So it hadn't been a financing problem before now, and now all of a sudden they think it's going to be a financing problem?
So the way that Mr. Fox explained this to me, that this industry is changing a lot, and I know over the years, things have changed a whole lot. So now evidently the protocol is solar companies submit lots and lots of projects to Duke Energy and other energy companies, but they're the biggest one. And they are allowed to approve or disapprove these solar farms to drop onto their grid. And they're a lot of the financing process. So that has changed the look of the industry and how they handle things. So evidently what has happened and what is happening have changed quite a bit.
Yeah, this is Bill Poe. Yeah, it was into 2011. It might have been back into the 2006 high impact, as far back as that original ordinance on these renewals, when it was these high impacts and the solar farm was involved with that ordinance. But again, a renewal, the fees, I think what is the renewal fees? It's very minimum. Is it not? And then
I think it was like $50.
yes, a $50 renewal fee. It's just like your car. I mean, or your property taxes. I mean, just little fees like that. They can't certainly add up to have financial strife on a solar farm, but it does require the site visit, and that would take count if landscaping has died or other things. I don't think that the whole purpose is to all of a sudden deny their permit once they have their original permit. That's not the point of this. Am I correct in saying that?
You're correct. And it was a good point that you made up about the automobile inspection. You got to do that every year. Every year, and you're gonna pay to get your car or truck one inspected. Now, this site required. I think that's a good idea. It needs to happen. And if it's a $50 fee every 3 years, $50 is not, I mean, that won't even cover the cost of the site visit.
So Ray and y'all, I think his intent on this is not the cost of the renewal, but the financing of the project could be jeopardized because it has to be renewed every 3 years, and their financing goes longer than that, and the financing companies are uneasy with the idea that they could lose that project in those 3 years if something goes.
Yeah, this is Vaughn. That's what I thought they were saying as well. They're not concerned about the $50. They want to see language that says we're not going to decommission a solar farm after 3 years because 2 of the trees died or the fence fell down or something like that. I don't know if there's a change language to make it address that or not, but I don't think they're worried about the $50. I think they're worried about losing the backing of their banker because they look at a 3-year term and think that's not long enough to get their money out of it.
Well, the whole idea of putting a solar project out of business is not the I don't think that's the purpose.
Oh, I agree. I agree with you.
I don't think that's the purpose. I mean, I feel like, and it's just my thoughts, Tanya, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the whole purpose of a 3-year permit is when that site visit does take place to make sure that those guys are on top of their game. So we don't have any more train wrecks that's being offensive to the neighborhood. Is that right?
It is, and I mean, we could put language in there to say that we can do a site visit at any time, that we don't have to wait 3 years. Any of that can go in there and give us any flexibility we need if that's what we're trying to do.
I think it's more on the permit side that they maybe have an issue. I don't think the site visit don't really bother them. I think it's that 3-year permit. And I understand the financing aspect of it. And, financing is very, I understand. I mean, you don't go to Walmart and get these solar farms. I mean, they are expensive. I realize that. But, if somebody throws something in there, but I mean, there needs to be a renewal process. Let me read that, what David's saying. Hold on a minute. I ain't got my eyes. It's gone.
David is saying, why do they feel feed the energy back into the grid, why are they not supplying those houses in the community?
I expect a lot of this got to do with they'd have to have accounts receivable department. As it
Yeah,
stands, they
that would,
check Duke Energy.
there,
And if I'm not mistaken, isn't Duke Energy's, I'm not a legal expert, but I don't think they can sell power in a Duke Energy controlled territory.
I think the whole purpose, Mr. Brooks, I think, and this is just me, my opinion here. I think the whole purpose is every time a solar farm goes up, it limits the responsibility or liability of a coal-powered plant.
it does.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
You know, in all honesty, solar is the better way to be. But, you know, as far as the solar companies selling, then that means they got to have a maintenance crew. They got to have meter readers, things of that nature. As it stands right now, they're making a deal with Duke Energy. They're selling that generated energy to Duke Energy, and Duke Energy's collecting for it. So we'll say Duke Energy is the middleman. I mean, that's just the appearance that I see of it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we could almost, if Section 6 gives heartburn for financing, down below this, under Article 5, the administrative enforcement and violations, we can move a lot of that stuff down here and still have the same ability, except we won't collect $50 every 3 years. But we can still go out and say a site visit's required, the other requirements and all that other stuff under the enforcement, can't we?
Yes.
Ms. Bill Poe, the whole section, the section 6 here, the whole basis is to have them stay in compliance with not just fencing and landscaping, but all these other things too. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the way it's written.
That's the way it looks to me.
So to me, the permit renewal, I don't know if you put language in there that won't affect their financing, but I mean, it is the only way you have for them to stay compliant. And then it kind of forces them to stay compliant, which they've got other things they've got to stay compliant with anyhow. I wonder how financing, like proof of tier 2 reporting, I mean, that they have to do that to stay compliant with financing too, would they not?
They've had that for us and other groups to keep their compliance, yeah.
Ms. Tanya,
Yes, sir.
I fully understand the comments from, I'll say, Mr. Attorney.
Mr. Fox,
Okay, Mr. Fox, I fully understand his concerns. But backing up on what Mr. Poe said earlier, because it kind of sort of resonated with me. I understand the financing part, but if you go and buy a new car, part of your requirements is your annual inspection that you will pay out of your pocket. And I hardly see how that's going to affect whether Ally is going to finance your car or not. So, I mean, if it's a requirement of ours, of the counties, that you have a 3-year renewal and you have annual, we'll say annual, biannual, or whenever we feel like it's site visits, just to make sure everything's in compliance, I would think that the financiers would be a little bit more comfortable with it because they're not financing a nuclear dump or something. I mean, at least their money is being tied up in a facility that meets the standards by far. Mr. Poe, did I miss that very much?
No, you pretty much hit it right on the head. And I mean, other high impact industries that we've talked about in the past, whether it was the Hydo or through Hydo or something like Chandler Concrete. I mean, I'm sure Ted Chandler, he has to comply every 3 years too, to a renewal, and he does it without without an issue.
That was very well put. You know, I tell you, I'm okay, and I mean, it's up to the, I mean, I'm just here, but I mean, I would say this would be up to the attending board members tonight. I would call that permit an operational issue. I don't think financing would actually get down to the operational issue. And the reason I'm saying that, over my years of buying equipment, if I bought a new case piece of equipment, if my requirements was run a particular type of diesel fuel in it, I don't think they really cared as long as I didn't abuse the equipment, as long as I was making payments to them. So I guess what I'm saying is the idea of renewal every 3 years is not bad as long as the solar farm owner is doing his job. If he's not doing his job, then we're going to wind up with more solar farms. It's going to be like the one on Snow Camp Road. Is that a fair statement, Mr. Poe?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so this was just a comment brought to the board. You were right. This board sitting tonight can make a determination on what they want to do with that. It sounds like the board may want to leave the ordinance as is. Y'all can finalize that. But that is all the comments I have from public on the ordinance as it is.
Okay. Mr. Brooks, what's your opinion?
I'm good with leaving it in there, just like it is, but that's fine with me.
I'm with you. Because I mean, obviously this has got to go in front of commissioners before it's ever, signed in as an ordinance anyway. And once again, staff, subcommittee, I mean, I feel like everybody's done a great job putting this together. That's my opinion.
This is their motion, leave it as is. Question. This is Vaughn. Are we gonna make any change to about the landscape installation date? Are we gonna consider these two things separate? Make a motion on both of them or do motions on them separately?
Miss Tanya, what you think?
I think that if you have a ordinance presented to you now, if someone goes to make a motion for approval or denial of the ordinance, you can say with the changes, including in whatever part you want or recommend change for, and then take a vote that way. Does that sound
Very
good
well.
to you?
I like it.
Mr. Brooks, do you want to change that about on the landscape installation, not at the permit issuance, but within 12 months of building permit issuance?
Well, that's fine with me.
Then I put that in the form of a motion.
So for the record, that was Vaughn making the motion with the one
Yes,
change.
Yes, that's correct.
So I
Okay.
took note on a change for the landscaping in the appendices too, for it to say 36 to 48 inches in a 7-gallon. And then you all want to change it back in the landscaping section as well for the timing of the landscaping to be 12 months. Is that right?
That's the understanding I have, Miss Tanya.
Yes, and
That's
change the word
12
permit
months for
issue.
building permit. Is that what we want to go with?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
Okay, Miss Tanya, I'm assuming we have a motion.
This is Lee. I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Willoughby and a second from Mr. Isley. All those in favor?
Roll call, please.
Vaughn Willoughby. Harriman first.
Lee Isley.
Neil Walker.
Gene Brooks. David
Bill
Sproul.
Poe.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Sproul is in the chat box.
Mr. Sproul said leave it in there. Do we know what he means by that?
I think he's referring to that renewal process.
Oh, okay. So we just need his vote at this point.
I think that was his vote in the chat. with his name.
Where's his vote?
I'm following now. My screen took a second. So Deborah, I don't think I heard from you yet.
Can Can you hear me, Tanya?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Cobb, I believe I've got everybody in approval, but
Okay, is anyone opposed? Miss Tanya, looks like it carries.
great. So what we'll do at this point is I'll ask commissioners for a public hearing and then we'll schedule that. We'll get with the county manager and with Amy on when they want to do that and hold that. And if they want kind of informational session before we go really to a vote, since they haven't been as involved in this. And we will put that out. We'll let you all know when all that's going to occur as well.
This is Vaughn. I have a question before we leave this solar issue. Mr. Chairman, can I address the group for a moment?
Sure.
I have a question about private homeowner-owned solar installations. What I'm referring to is someone who goes in their backyard and puts about 5 or 6 panels out in the back of their property. Who regulates that? Does this ordinance address any of that? Or is there no, what's the deal with something like that?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Would you like me to handle that or do you want to do that?
You go right ahead.
I'm just curious because
it's in there.
Someone
Well,
told me
residential
about
development is specifically excluded from this ordinance. So
Okay.
currently, the only thing a person has to do when they want to put it on the roof or put it on the ground is go through building inspections. And if they are putting it on the ground, we require them to meet the regular setbacks, 20 foot or 10 foot on the side, 20 foot in the rear, and then either 35 or 40 foot on the front, depending on what road they're on. And that's their minimum standards to keep them away from property lines.
Okay, well, I didn't know, and someone asked me, they knew that I was on this board and was working on this plan, and they said, well, what's the deal with private homeowner installed panels? And I said, we've never talked about that, and I don't know, and I'll find out. So thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
All right, are we good with solar energy, ma'am?
I have all the notes. I think we're good.
Hey,
All right,
Ray.
awesome. Yes, sir.
Mr. Willoughby, if you look at the definitions on page 4 for the solar energy systems, it says it does not apply to agriculture, farming, residence, business, or other facility where the sale of electricity so produced is secondary to on-site consumption. So if it's a business and because we tried to make sure we covered that in here too.
Okay. Well, I'm fine with that. I just wasn't sure. I didn't have an answer for that person at the time, so I do now. So
Yeah, I knew that we were I knew we put it in there somewhere. It just took me a minute to figure it out where we put it.
Is everybody good?
I'm good. Thank you.
You're very welcome, sir. Ms. Tanya, do we have any old business?
No old business, no, sir.
All right, so we got some announcements and discussions. Let's whip it up.
So y'all are aware that we're doing the land development plan. Of course, we're taking on this plan in a really weird timing. We've done some virtual meetings and probably we'll do at least one more virtual meeting when we get a decent draft of the proposed update. And we're going to try to reach out to the public in-person meetings, depending on how the virus goes and how our phasing goes throughout the state. We do currently have a survey out there through the website. Would love for all planning board members to do the survey. It'll take you a few minutes. I think it's like 10 or 12 questions. It's not a whole lot, but we have 3 different proposals of what we could move forward with for the kind of master plan for the county. I think it'd be important that planning board members see that and get a feel for it before it comes to you to look at in more of a draft final. That's important to us. We're closing that out at the end of the month and trying to get as much input as we can to make sure we're going the way everybody really wants the county to go. And from there, we're going to do some more public input, but we're looking at later this fall, probably before October-ish, trying to get a draft to you all for review and approval and get to the Board of Commissioners before the end of the year as well to get the project finalized. So that project is coming along pretty quickly. Feels like it quickly to me. I know we've been working on it since December, but we're in the home stretch and I really would like for y'all to make sure you're involved up front and take advantage of our surveys and information. And then you'll be part of the end product either way. But we're looking for input from you all and anybody else. We're putting it out there. We'll speak to groups, anything we need to do, just kind of get people involved.
Awesome. Miss Tanya, is that everything?
That's everything I have.
All right, I'll be more than glad to look at that plan, but I'm gonna probably want to do it over a piece of cake.
Well, Taylor will have to take care of that part for you.
I can't even provide. My dog got to the cake during this meeting.
Oh, yeah, likely story.
Uh,
Dog ate the cake instead of your homework.
I
Okay.
would not lie about that. I would much rather eat the cake myself.
Miss Taylor,
Yes.
your fingers broke?
No.
All right. Did they come pull your power meter?
Did they do what?
Pull your power meter.
Wasn't me, no.
All right. Well, then if you got power and your fingers ain't broken, that cook stove's all good and fine. You can still have a solid cake bag.
That's true.
I'm just messing with you, young lady.
I know it.
If that's everything, it brings us to our final item, and I need a motion.
This is Gene Brooks. I make a motion, we adjourn.
This is Vaughn, I'll second.
Everybody have a nice evening.
Thank you.
You too. Thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
Thank you.